It's a rainy afternoon on Friday, November 28th here in Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung, and these are the stories we're following at this hour. Global crude oil prices plunged to their lowest since 2010. This after members of OPEC decide not to cut the production level of 30 million barrels a day. Mexico's president vows to tackle the country's widespread crime and corruption. He proposes dozens of reforms, including an initiative for constitutional reform. And Nongak, or Korea's traditional farm music and dance ritual, has been listed on UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage. North Korea's version of the folk song ARIRANG also makes it on the list. And we begin with oil prices. Brent crude has hit $70 per barrel. It's the lowest price seen since the 2010. This plunge follows OPEC's decision to keep its daily quota at 30 million barrels a day, despite calls from various circles to trim that target. ARIRANG's Connie Lee tells us more.
Oil prices have been on the downward spiral for a while now, but they sunk even further on Thursday after OPEC decided not to cut oil production. During a 6-hour-long meeting in Vienna, the 12 members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries decided to maintain their oil output at current levels.
The conference decided to maintain the production level of 30 million barrels a day, as was agreed in December 2011.
After the announcement, Brent crude oil tumbled below $73 a barrel, a low not seen since May 2010.
4 years or 4 years and a half, we have a very decent price. So now price decline. That does not mean that we should really, rush and do something.
The decision, led by Saudi Arabia, was reached despite a global oversupply and calls from less well-off members who favored a production cut to stem the sliding crude prices. Prices have been dropping like a stone this year, losing around 30% of their value since June in the face of rising shale oil production in the U.S. Energy experts believe OPEC's strategy is to maintain its dominance in the market in the long run. A further drop in crude oil prices will make U.S. shale oil less economical. Although Thursday's outcome didn't come as a surprise, it will hurt non-OPEC exporters like Russia, which already faces Western sanctions over its role in Ukraine. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
So the falling price of oil may not be welcome news for non-OPEC exporters, but it is expected to bring about positive impacts to countries like Korea that rely heavily on oil imports. Experts say it could create a virtuous cycle for the Korean economy as drops in prices bring down production costs. Seoul-based Hyundai Research Institute last month forecast for every 10% drop in oil prices, Korean exports grow by nearly 1.2%. Domestic consumption would also grow by 0.7%, and this, the institute says, will eventually lead to a 0.3% increase in the nation's gross domestic product. Senior officials from Korea and Japan sat down on Thursday for high-level talks in Seoul. Many issues were dealt with, but what most Koreans are curious about is whether progress was made on the issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women before and after World War II. Hwang Sung-hee has this next report.
For the 5th time this year, senior officials from Korea and Japan met to discuss Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. What's different about Thursday's meeting is that it came after President Park Geun-hye and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe expressed hopes for tangible progress in the high-level talks when they met on the sidelines of the APEC summit. Around 200,000 women, mostly Korean, were forced to serve the Japanese military during the Second World War, and the issue has long been a thorn in their bilateral ties. Seoul has called on Tokyo to take sincere steps to compensate the aging victims, but Japan insists the matter was legally settled through a bilateral treaty in 1965. An official at Seoul's foreign ministry declined to provide details, but noted that positive progress was made at each round of talks. Despite recent controversy over the comfort women issue, the Japanese official reiterated Tokyo's stance about upholding the so-called Kono Statement. Also discussed was the planned trilateral foreign ministers meeting with China. The official expressed skepticism about the 3 top diplomats sitting down within this year, saying it would likely only happen after the December 14th elections in Japan. The 2 sides will meet again for a 6th meeting in Tokyo next month. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's younger sister has been appearing more and more with her brother in the country's state media in recent weeks. To go with her increased public presence, she's been granted an official title. Starting Thursday, Pyongyang's Korean Central News Agency referred to Kim Yo-jong as a deputy director of the ruling Workers' Party, a position roughly equal to vice minister. The 27-year-old was among the officials who accompanied the regime leader when he visited an animation studio in Pyongyang. Now, she's believed to be a staunch supporter of her brother in the absence of their once powerful aunt Kim Kyung-hee, who has been missing from the public eye since the execution of her husband, Chang Song-taek. The final trailer for the interview is out. For those who are not familiar, this is a Hollywood-produced action comedy that has been getting quite a lot of attention. The movie will hit American cinema screens late next month. Our Connie Kim takes us through the latest trailer.
The final trailer for the first Hollywood film to depict North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is out. The interview, which centers on a TV talk show host and his producer, were drafted by the CIA to assassinate the young dictator while in the North to film a show. But the final trailer released this week shows the protagonists, played by actors James Franco and Seth Rogen, having fun with the man they're supposed to kill.
It was a gift to my grandfather from Stalin.
In my country, it's pronounced Stallone.
From hanging out in a tank to bonding over pop songs.
I've never heard this before in my life.
I love Katy Perry.
Really?
Yes, you should, across the sky. Sky.
Through their interactions with Kim's character, Rogen and Franco's characters start having doubts about their mission to kill the young dictator. The movie clearly pokes fun at North Korea's mysterious leader, but the regime isn't in on the joke. They've called it a wanton act of terror and threatened the United States of a merciless response once it's released.
I have a gift for you.
And perhaps bowing to the pressure, it's been reported that a scene in which Kim is assassinated in the comedy ended up on the editing room floor. Regardless, it remains to be seen how Pyongyang reacts to its leader being depicted as the butt of the joke. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Well, back to reality. The leaders of South Korea and Hungary expressed grave concerns over North Korea's nuclear and missile development and agreed that the regime needed to disarm for the sake of peace and stability in the region. In a joint statement following talks in Seoul Friday, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban also endorsed President Park Geun-hye's peace-building initiatives on the peninsula and in Northeast Asia. Looking to develop relations, Seoul officially signed deals with Budapest that include code sharing between their airliners and offering scholarships to students of the other country. In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto has been under mounting criticism for the disappearance of 43 college students in September. On Thursday, local time, he announced that it was the work of organized crime working in tandem with local authorities.
Iguala's tragedy, combined with unacceptable conditions of institutional weaknesses that we cannot ignore. A criminal group which controlled the territory of various municipalities. Municipal authorities were part of the very structure of the criminal organization. Municipal police were in reality criminals.
Now, he pledged to overhaul his country's police force, which is seen by many as corrupt to the core, by sending an initiative for constitutional reform to pave the path for Mexico's 1,800 municipal police forces to be taken over by state agencies. He said the overhaul would begin in 4 of the country's most violent states, where the 43 college students had vanished on September 26th. That's Guerrero. Hours before the announcement, 11 partially burned bodies were found an hour's drive from where the students went missing. It is unclear yet whether the 2 incidents are related. Now, protests and unrest sparked by the Michael Brown case have been put to at least a temporary pause with the Thanksgiving holiday in the U.S. In Ferguson, police said only 2 people were arrested Wednesday night. Instead, residents gathered for turkey giveaways and church services where a pastor consoled the heartbroken Midwestern community and prayed for the families of Michael Brown and Officer Darren Wilson. This as another fatal police shooting came to light. Police in Cleveland released a security video on request of family that showed Sunday's event leading up to a 12-year-old African-American boy being shot by police officers. A 911 dispatcher apparently had not relayed the caller's report that he did not believe the boy was waving a real gun. And back here in Korea, when you listen to it for the first time, it might come across as just a mix of loud and weird noises. But that loud music has now been inscribed on UNESCO's list of Intangible Heritage. Nongak is a traditional Korean farm music with a rich and prestigious history. Kim Ji-yeon tells us more about the music.
A rush of adrenaline, and then comes a calmness one feels when encountering Nongak, a traditional Korean music from the early 1900s. Coined as farm music, Nongak was chanted by farmers while working long, back-breaking hours in the field to help them overcome the difficulty of agricultural life. The music is enjoyed today by many Koreans for its upbeat rhythm and performance, and now it's officially recognized by UNESCO as one of the world's intangible cultural heritage. Nongak is Korea's 17th item on the UNESCO list, alongside the country's folk song ARIRANG and the making and sharing of kimchi known as kimjang.
Nongak is a creative art form. The performers and the audience are united as they're invited to join along in the performance's rhythmic changes.
The recognition of Nongak as a UNESCO cultural heritage is expected to become a catalyst in the move to preserve the art form, to pass it down to generations.
This will be a great motivation to come up with creative and systematic ways to preserve and develop our rich cultural asset.
Also added to the UNESCO list this year is North Korea's version of the folk song ARIRANG, alongside South Korea's version of the song, which was added back in 2012. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
There's a significant shift in attitude toward marriage underway in Korea these days. More and more Koreans are saying there's no real need to tie the knot. New data shows more than 4 out of 10 Koreans don't consider marriage something a person has to do. Just 6 years ago, less than a third of Koreans had the same view. The survey conducted by Statistics Korea also found that 47% of Koreans would be willing to live with their boyfriend or girlfriend, something that would have been looked down upon just a couple of decades ago. Now, 3/4 of respondents also said the process of getting married is just too stressful, not to mention the financial expenses of a nice wedding ceremony. Now, it's a future that I personally hope will never come, but more and more reports are coming out that we might see foods made with insects on our dinner tables in the near future. Kwon So-ah says the Korean government wants to promote the edible insect market here. Take a look.
Protein blocks made of cockroaches. This horrifying scene from the hit Korean movie Snowpiercer is the stuff of Hollywood, but may not be far from reality in the near future. From silkworms and locusts to darkling beetles and white-spotted flower chafers, Korea's food ministry now recognizes 4 insects as being edible. The government is serious about the market. It says bugs could become our main source of food in the future due to predicted food shortages brought on by a growing population. It expects the economic value of insects used for food and medicine to reach over $63 million next year. Insects aren't only abundant in number, but nutritious and especially high in protein. They are also more efficient. While 100 kilograms of food for a cow will produce 6.5 kilograms of meat for the dinner plate, the same amount fed to insects produces 54 kilograms of food for consumption.
The real question is, will people really want to eat these insects on a daily basis? Bug burgers like this one might be the answer to making the thought a little more appetizing.
This is made of insects? I didn't know that. It tastes good.
At this exhibition, where insect dishes are on display and available for tasting, experts say it's important to change people's perception of insects from yucky to yummy. But it's not the only challenge.
Insects contain toxins, and it hasn't been closely examined yet if they are harmful to humans. Korea's Ministry of Food and Drug Safety is very strict with inspections.
A sterilizing process to make them safe, meaning more production facilities are needed. But industry watchers say it's worth the investment, and by promoting consumer-friendly menus, it might not be too long before insects become a staple on the dinner table. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Well, the time has come. Awards season for actors and actresses has begun here in Korea. The first one, the Grand Bell Awards, or Daejong Awards, took place last week. And today we have a film critic, Jason Bechervaise, joining us in the studio to talk about it. Welcome back, Jason.
Thank you for having me, as always.
So the Grand Bell is considered one of Korea's or the biggest awards ceremony, right?
Yes, certainly with the most history, 51 years now. We've also got the Blue Dragon Awards, which take place next month, and they had the nominations that came out this week. The Attorney, I think, it's taken around 10 nominations. And then you have the Korean Association of Film Critics. They have their awards, which took place earlier this month. So it's kind of the awards season here in Korea. So there are a few award ceremonies that take place. But yeah, the Grand Bell does have a lot of history to it.
Right. It's kind of like the Oscars in the States, right?
Yeah, it certainly has the glamour. It's a big glamour show. The celebrities come along. There's the red carpet. They have a very nice awards ceremony. What I would say is that this award ceremony, many of the award ceremonies that take place at the Blue Dragon Awards as well, they tend to pick more commercially successful films rather than the independent films. Personally, I'd like to see more independent films get awarded as well. And so the critics will say it's kind of a popularity contest. But they do, I mean, it is trying to award the films that do get the critical praise, but also the films that are popular with viewers too.
So a mix of both of each, perhaps. And the big winner, okay, so we're going to talk about the winners here. So the big one was, of course, Roaring Currents.
Roaring Currents, otherwise known as Myeongyang, massive hit earlier on this year, over 70 million admissions, biggest hit ever. It follows Admiral Yi Sun-shin, played by Chae Min-sik, as he takes on, he has 12 ships against an armada, Japanese armada of 300 odd ships in 1597. Chae Min-sik won Best Actor, and the film won the Best Film Prize, also won Best Technical Awards, and along with Best Planning as well.
And you would view this as being a bit odd because the film was, it was a massive hit, it was popular, yes, but it wasn't really praised by film critics that much.
Yeah, it wasn't embraced by film critics, put it that way. Masquerade, for example, a couple of years ago, that won loads of awards. I think
that's Kwanghae in Korea.
Kwanghae in Korea, 15 or so awards it walked away with, and also big hit at the box office as well. We haven't seen that here. We've seen it take the big award and the best actor. We didn't see it take the best director, which would suggest that, okay, critically it wasn't the most successful film, but it was a massive success in the box office.
And perhaps the popularity of that was because of Admiral Lee Sun-shin.
I think it came at the right time as well. There was a lot of despondency here in Korea following the Seoul sinking, the tragic sinking, and it is a film that deals with, I think, a bit of national pride, and I think that was a factor too. And Kim Ha-min, the director, did put together the battle sequences quite well, and so there are various factors in its success. But yeah, I guess it's fair to say that it did very well at the box office.
Right. Okay, so for 3 years in a row, nonetheless, period films have been winning these awards. I mean, first we started with Masquerade to The Face Reader, and now it was Roaring Currents.
Yeah, there seems to be a bit of a trend.
I know. So do you reckon that this will be the same for next year?
Well, we've got a few period films coming out. We've got Sado, which will be a big period film next year, starring Song Kang-ho and directed by Lee Jun-ik. I'm not sure exact time it will be released, perhaps Chuseok. We have The Royal
So next autumn.
Yeah, and then we have The Royal Tailor that's coming out this Christmas, directed by Lee Won-sok, and we've got The Memories of the Sword as well, starring Lee Byung-hun and Jun Dae-yeon. So there are also many others as well, so we could see more period films winning big awards.
Okay, so let's shift from Myeongnyang to other awards that were given out. The other big winners were Hard Day and The Attorney, right?
Yeah, Hard Day was very, very warmly received by critics, by the press, not just here in Korea, but in Cannes as well, where it had its premiere. Kim Sung-won, the director, won Best Director and also won Best Lighting as well and Cinematography. So there is a recognition there that it was warmly embraced by critics. Actually did quite well in the box office too, 3 million admissions back in May. And then we have The Attorney, which actually received a number of nominations, I think 11 in total. And Yang Woo-sok, the director, he won Best New Director along with Best Screenplay as well.
So many nominations, but not too many prize to take home.
Yeah, it did very well at the box office, 10 million,
right,
10 million
yeah,
admissions.
I remember it being very
Roaring
successful.
Currents, I mean, the success was unprecedented.
Right.
No film was got anywhere near the success of that film. 70 million people went to see that. Many, of course, probably went to see it more than once, but it's a huge, huge number.
Right. All right. So going back to the awards, so far we've talked about some predictable ones. So any surprises in giving out prizes?
For me, Son Ye-jin for Best Actress. She was in The Pirates, again a successful film at the box office. So that's perhaps why she won Best Actress. For me, Chun Woo-hee, who was in Han Gong-ju, she played the leading actress in Han Gong-ju, and I think she was the favourite, certainly amongst critics, but she didn't get the award on the night. Son Ye-jin did, but there will be many fans of hers that will no doubt be very supportive of that, and also her co-star Yoo Hae-jin won Best Supporting Actor for his role in The Pirates too. So for me, they were surprise winners. I didn't expect those.
Okay, all right. Well, let's leave the Grand Bell Awards talk there and move on to next week's big release, Exodus. You said it was going to be premiered, or it's going to hit Korea's theaters first compared to any other parts of the world.
Exodus Gods and Kings, directed by Ridley Scott, based on the famous story in the Old Testament. It's being released in Korea on the 3rd of December, Wednesday. It's a day earlier than anywhere else. I think it's quite significant because there is many Christians that reside in Korea, and I think they're certainly aiming the film at those. And also, certain films do very, very well in Korea, and so I think we could see a big number with the film if it resonates well with viewers. We've seen Interstellar do extremely well. We've seen films such as Iron Man, Transformers, and we've seen smaller films as well, About Time, Begin Again. They've done very well in Korea, and so the Hollywood studios are taking notice. And so I think there is an intent there to release in Korea first, or at least as soon as it can, compared to other territories. So.
And that was kind of the same case for Noah as well.
Yeah, Noah is interesting. It was released here first, I think partly because films in Korea generally release on a Thursday, whereas in the States and in parts of Europe it's on a Friday, so that's why it's released in Korea first. But it was interesting that the figures that came out of Korea were quite good, and so they were saying it did open very well in Korea, and it kind of generates a strong buzz for the film, so that works in the studio's favour. And so I think perhaps there is some intent there to release it in Korea first. First on Wednesday, and then it rolls out in a few territories, I think on Thursday, Mexico and Argentina. But it doesn't roll out in the States until at least a week later, in parts of Europe even later.
So Korea is becoming the testbed for some of the film producers.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Yeah, exactly.
Right, in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Jason, for coming to the studio today and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it from us at this hour. More news coming up at 4 p.m. Korea time. See you then.